Triple header.
Triple flip.
I would like to call to order the joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and the Glendale Housing Authority for July 27th, 2010. May we have the roll call for the council, please?
Councilmember Strayman.
Here.
Friedman. Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here.
And can we have the roll call for the redevelopment agency, please?
Agency members Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Friedman. Vice Chair Drayman.
Here.
May we have the roll call for the Housing Authority?
Authority members Drayman.
Here.
Friedman. Mincy. Najarian.
Here.
Brazian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Quintero.
Here.
Will you read the report, please?
Agenda for the July 27, 2010 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, July 22, 2010 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. I won as Director of Community Services and Parks regarding conditional grant agreement with SH Ho Hope and Compassion Center to provide $2 million bridge loan for the development of a homeless access center and emergency shelter acquisition and rehabilitation project at 1851 Tyburn Street in collaboration with Path Achieve Glendale. 1A is a council resolution approving a conditional grant agreement with the Redevelopment Agency, Housing Authority, and SH Ho Hope and Compassion Center pertaining to the project. At B is agency resolution approving a conditional grant agreement with City, Housing Authority, and SH Ho Hope and Compassion Center pertaining to the project. At C is authority resolution approving a conditional grant agreement with the City Redevelopment Agency and SH Ho Hope and Compassion Center pertaining to the project. And D is a council resolution appropriating $2 million to provide funds for the project.
Thank you. Mr. Starwood.
Yes, I go to Jess Duran, Assistant Director, Community Services and Parks, for the staff report. Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Starbird. Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, Acting Chair Drayman, members of the Redevelopment Agency, and Chairman Quintero and members of the Glendale Housing Authority. On May 4th of this year, the City Council authorized the City Manager to submit a Section 108 loan application to the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development in order to provide funding to the SH Ho Hope and Compassion Center nonprofit organization in partnership with Chief Glendale for an acquisition and rehabilitation project to develop a new access center and emergency shelter for homeless individuals and families in the city of Glendale. At the same time, since the Section 108 loan application process does take some time, and we estimated it would take about 4 months for HUD to approve a loan application, the City Council directed staff to seek HUD's approval of the city's issuance of a bridge loan to the Compassion Center and utilizing the Section 108 loan proceeds once they were received from HUD at a later date to reimburse the city for the city's bridge loan to the nonprofit organization. So on June 1st, the city did obtain HUD's verbal approval of the issuance of a bridge loan. Formal approval will come as part of the approved Section 108 loan application in about 4 or 6 months, but we do have verbal approval. And also in our discussions with HUD, HUD did assure the city of Glendale that based on the project description that we had submitted to HUD and our draft application, that HUD did not see any problems with HUD's approval of our Section 108 loan. So both HUD and staff is very confident that the loan will be approved. HUD also said that because of their caseload, loan approval might be closer to taking 6 months versus the 4 months, which was our original estimate, and because of that actually agreed that a bridge loan was a sensible thing for the City Council to consider for the project. And when the Section 108 loan is approved, in about 4 to 6 months, the city will execute a loan agreement directly with HUD and be solely responsible for the repayment of the loan and for providing security on the loan. So the agreement will be between the city and HUD and not the Compassion Center. The Compassion Center and Path Achieve Glendale are ready to close escrow on a property and to begin construction, for which the bridge loan is needed. Therefore, staff is at this time recommending the City Council, the Redevelopment Agency, and the Housing Authority's approval to execute a conditional grant agreement, which is the vehicle to provide the bridge loan, and then the City Council's approval to appropriate general funds to a project account in the Community Development Fund in order to be able to disperse the funds to the Compassion Center to begin their project. And just as a reminder, what this project consists of is the acquisition of an 8,000 square foot property consisting of an 8,150 square foot two-story industrial commercial building located at 1948 Gardena Avenue, also known as 1851 Tyburn. Rehabilitation work includes converting a warehouse to shelter and office use and adding 2,717 square feet on the second floor. The expanded space will allow for separation of sleeping quarters between men and women and children. The acquisition and rehabilitation of the Access Center and Emergency Shelter is one component of a larger acquisition and expansion of services project. The second component is the acquisition and rehabilitation of one or more apartment buildings to provide permanent supportive housing that would be made available to the graduates of the emergency shelter and families and individuals that go through the continuum of care system, for which the majority of the Compassion Center's $2 million match contribution would be used. The budget for both components of the project is $4 million. Therefore, the basic agreement is that the city would provide $2 million towards the project, and the Compassion Center would provide $2 million towards the project to cover the $4 million cost. The city's $2 million would go towards the acquisition and rehabilitation of the Access Center Emergency Shelter, currently estimated at $2.8 million, and that includes $1.25 million for acquisition and $1.6 million for the rehabilitation work. And the Compassion Center's $2 million match would go towards completing the rehabilitation of the Access Center, which would be about $800,000 from their match, and the balance of their $2 million match would go towards acquisition and rehabilitation of the permanent supportive housing units, which would be about $1.2 million. In terms of the basic terms and conditions of the conditional grant agreement, we are referring to the bridge loan agreement as a conditional grant agreement, but it is very much in the form of what we call a forgivable loan agreement, but for purposes of satisfying the donor's requirements, we're calling it a conditional grant agreement. Now, what a forgivable loan means is that the city's grant and the city's interest will be forgiven after a 20-year term, provided that the nonprofit organization continues to provide services throughout that term. The forgivable loan will also be based on a modified 20-year amortization schedule, meaning that if the Compassion Center discontinues providing services, within 10 years, Compassion Center must repay the City of Glendale the full amount of the city's conditional grant or pay back the city's $2 million. If the Compassion Center needs to discontinue services after 10 years, then the Compassion Center must repay the city 5% of the original conditional grant amount for every year remaining in the 20-year term. So, for example, if they can discontinue services after 10 years, then the Compassion Center would owe the city 5% times 10 years, or $1 million of its original $2 million loan. In terms of security, the city will execute a promissory note and a deed of trust recorded with the county recorder. In terms of the disbursement of funds, it would be based on a cost reimbursement, which means that although the funds would be obligated to the project, that the city's funds would remain in a city project account until such time that the costs are incurred and invoices received from the city of Glendale. However, immediately the city will be depositing the acquisition cost of the $1.25 million into the escrow to allow the Compassion Center to close escrow. And then for the rehabilitation costs, the city will hold those funds in the city account until they are needed and invoiced by the Compassion Center. The Compassion Center will deposit their matching funds into a separate escrow account on a dollar-for-dollar basis, meaning that as the city disperses its conditional grant funds, the Compassion Center will be depositing an equal amount into their escrow account. So, for example, when the city funds the close of escrow, the $1.25, and the Compassion Center will be obligated at the same time to deposit 1.25 into their escrow account so that we always have that match balanced. In terms of ownership and lease, Compassion Center will retain ownership of the project property and will lease the property to Path Achieve Glendale for no less than 20 years. Compassion Center will also execute a service agreement with Path Achieve Glendale, and if at any time, for any reason, Path Achieve Glendale is unable to perform services, the Compassion Center will be responsible for obtaining a new qualified service provider who shall be approved by the City of Glendale. In terms of, even though we and HUD feel very confident that the Section 108 loan will be approved, the conditional grant agreement does include a contingency in the event that the HUD loan is not approved. This is important because we're going to begin the project while the loan application is still being reviewed by HUD for final approval. So, if for any reason the city does not receive the Section 108 loan funds, the Compassion Center will be required to use their $2 million match, which will be in an escrow account, to pay back the city for the city's bridge loan and make the city's general funds whole. However, in exchange, the Housing Authority will provide a guarantee to the Compassion Center to provide a conditional grant of $2 million in order for the Compassion Center to be able to meet their obligation under the conditional grant agreement to fulfill the permanent supportive housing component of the project. And then if the Housing Authority is required to do that, to provide the conditional grant funds, the Housing Authority's conditional grant would occur by way of an increased share of increment revenues from the Redevelopment Agency to the Housing Authority's low and moderate income housing funds. Then that means that the Redevelopment Agency would be required to approve a resolution appropriating those funds to the Housing Authority for the Housing Authority to guarantee the housing units for the Compassion Center. The conditional grant agreement requires the Compassion Center to commence the rehabilitation work by July 1st of 2011 and to complete the work no later than 1 year after commencement, and to complete the acquisition and rehabilitation of the permanent supportive housing units within 2 years after completion of the Access Center. And so those are the basic terms and conditions of the conditional grant agreement. And so we're here to ask for Council's approval of the agreement and the appropriation to be able to deposit the funds in a project account, to be able to disperse them to the Compassion Center to get the project underway.
Okay, I have two requests to speak, and then we can come back for questions. Nick Lamb, and then Rodney Kahn.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Lamb. I'm here today speaking as the board chair for Path Achieve Glendale. First of all, I want to thank the city and the various departments to give Path Achieve Glendale and the SHO Hope and Compassion Center the opportunity to be a 50-50 partnership to do something good for the city of Glendale. I am glad to report to the committee, the three different, the City Council and the two other agencies, that the purchase of the building is down to the wire, and we are ready to close escrow by the end of this month. And as Jess has already given you the detail, I'm not going to be talking much about that, other than to reiterate that as soon as the city gives the money to buy the building, the $1.25 million, immediately the private matching fund of $1.25 million, the same amount will be put into an escrow account. As soon as the city spends the remaining of the $2 million, which is $750,000, the Hope and Compassion Center will immediately put another $750,000 into escrow account. So it is a truly 50-50 partnership between the public and private, and I'm proud to be involved in the process. I don't really have much more to add other than saying that the Assistant City Attorney Mike Garcia did a good job drafting the agreement. We have spent a lot of time checking the agreement, have our attorney look at it. We are okay with it. We feel comfortable with it. There may be a few minor items that we will finalize, but overall we are happy with the agreement. We are comfortable with the agreement, and we are ready to close escrow and go to work and build something that is permanent and long-term and is good for the city of Glendale. And I ask for help to approve the resolution so we can get the process going. Mr. Rodney Khan, the board member of Park Chief Glendale, also our development chief, has a picture of the rendering, which is showing how the building will look like, what it looks like. And we can show you if it is your desire. And if you have any question for me or for Mr. Khan, we'd be happy to answer that. And with that, I thank you. And Ronnie, if you want to say something.
I have a question, Mr. Lamb. Is David Ho involved with the SH Ho Hope and Compassion
Yes.
organization?
The SH Ho Hope and Compassion Center is the funding, the $2 million comes from SH Ho Foundation. Dr. SH Ho is a grandfather of David Ho. David Ho is the owner and president of Pacific BMW. So it's basically his family money that he is, taking from to put into the city of Glendale. It's their personal family money.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Lamb? If not, we'll go to Rodney Khan. You can show us, you might as well unveil it, Rodney. You don't have to ask.
I'll see if, is this a good,
Yep. Up slightly. There you go.
like this?
There you go.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, City staff. My name is Rodney Khan, and I'm here as a board member of Path Achieve Glendale. I'm just going to add a few things to what Mr. Lamb said. I thought he did a very complete presentation. This is actually the facility, and to refresh your memories, it's right on the border of the city of Glendale and the city of Los Angeles on Tyburn Street. And Tyburn Street is in close proximity to the Glendale Transportation Center, also to Cerritos Park and Cerritos Elementary School. And what you're looking at here is you're looking at an emergency shelter, which, as Mr. Duran pointed out, will be for women, children, and men, along with an access center. And a couple things that have been updated since we last met with you. One is we contemplated using the roof as an outdoor area. That's something new and different for us. And what we were looking at doing was saying, if we can create space up there that's usable for the residents to be able to use, we'll do that. What we're doing right now, though, is we're looking at costs. How much does that cost more for us to be able to do that? The second thing that we've changed or updated is we're actually looking at incorporating many of the green building techniques and elements that the City of Glendale is trying to encourage in private projects right now. So everything from recycled carpets to recycled materials for the hardware to our commercial kitchen. We're actually repurchasing other kitchen equipment from restaurants that are no longer in business, to water-free urinals, and the list goes on. So anyway, so that's kind of the latest and greatest update. We are in plan check right now. What we are hoping to do is get our building permit by the end of this year. Then what's new for Nick and I, and the city staff is helping us out, is we will go out to a public bid for the construction work. So that's going to be something that we've not experienced, but that we will go through for the contractor, the selection of the contractor, and then we're looking at about 12 months for the construction time to do the tenant improvements. So in a best case scenario, we move into the new facility probably in about a year and a half from now. So that gives you an update. Thank you very much, and we hope you approve this bridge loan.
Thank you. Comments, Mr. Quintero?
Well, I do have comments. I want to thank Mr. Lamb and the whole family for this and really incredible contribution of money, especially in these economic times. It's just fantastic that you're going to match the grant. We've all been supporters of this project from the beginning. It's certainly the right location, it's the right building. Mr. Khan forgot to mention it's near the Verdugo Job Center, which means it's within walking distance of the Verdugo Job Center, so the very families that are there, the adults and whatever, if there's any teenagers available for work, they'll literally be able to walk to the job center and get the kind of services that they need for retraining or placement, et cetera. So I'm very happy that the day's arrived, and I'm looking forward to the ribbon cutting.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Ms. Perazzi?
Is the Compassion Center going to provide services just Glendale homeless population or outside the city also?
It was mentioned to me that it's mainly Glendale and Glendale's population, but there is a small percentage that comes outside of Glendale as well. So we serve the different people that are brought to the center or that come to the center. And it's kind of a mix, and probably Mr. Duran could probably speak to that a little bit better than I can as to what percentage is Glendale residents and what percentage is not.
Mr. Duran, that question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once completed, the Compassion Center project or the Access Center Emergency Shelter will continue to receive the funding that it currently receives from the City of Glendale, which for the Access Center and Emergency Shelter is about $750,000 out of the Supportive Housing Program funds. And so we will be closely monitoring the program as we've always done, and we will be receiving reports. And the services do have to be open to residents and non-residents. Yvette reminded me that between 75 and 80% of the persons that go through the emergency shelter are Glendale residents or have ties to Glendale, and then the balance would be from outside the area. Okay. But it is open to anyone that needs the services.
Thank you.
Mr. Weaver?
Okay, where did the name Compassion Center come from? All of a sudden it just is there. Who came up with that? Just curiosity.
I actually gave a lot of thought about that.
Well, you're the one.
Yes. Obviously, we need to have compassion in order to help all these people in need in the city of Glendale. However, we want more than just compassion. We want to build hope in people's life. If you know about our center, we want people to come in and improve themselves. We don't want to be a permanent shelter so they can come in every night and sleep and eat and not do anything and never improve in their life. We hope and work to build hope in their lives so they want to improve themselves so they can eventually get out of homelessness. That's why we want to call the center Hope and Compassion. It's not only hope and it's not only compassion, but it's both hope and compassion.
Hope and compassion.
Hope and compassion.
Not to be...
So that's the reason.
Got the Bob Hope Airport, now we got the Hope and Compassion Center.
Right. So the full name is the S.H. Ho, which is David Ho's grandfather's name.
That's fine, Nick.
Hope and Compassion Center.
It's just that the public got to know where the new name came from.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm prepared.
Okay, I've no other cards. I'm going to stop public comment at this point. What?
I hope it's pertinent.
Mr. Mohill, you're
Mr. Mohill put the wrong item number on.
item that doesn't exist on our agenda well, we have certain protocol. Mr. City Attorney, tie goes to the runner? What do we got here?
Mr. Mayor, as I indicated before, if you desire to have a cutoff point for cards, you need to announce that in advance. Not necessarily in advance of the item, but at some point in time you need to announce that so that individuals
certainly
know.
speakers do have an obligation to indicate the agenda item that they're speaking on. So technically, there is no item 2A. This is about as good as a $3 bill then.
I would say it's probably worth a little bit more than a $3 bill, but I would always advise the council to err on the side of allowing the speaker to speak.
Well, I'll take your advice, Mr. Howard.
As long as it's pertinent.
It was up to me. Mr. Mohill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry I didn't cross the T and dot the I.
Well, no, it's not crossing the T and dotting the
I was-
I. We've
I
got a
was-
meeting to run,
No,
and
I
we
just happened-
expect...
I just happened-
We expect, I'm sorry, Mr. Moe, we expect you to properly indicate which item. You're not a rookie here. I mean...
No, I understand,
I would treat a
but
Boy
I-
Scout who came here
Well,
much
the way-
differently
but the-
than you,
but the
who's
way
been
the-
here
but the way the
numerous...
cards are-
Don't interrupt me, Mr. Mohill.
Okay.
Who's been here numerous times and certainly knows the protocol, the way to fill out a card, and the time in which to submit a card. But on the advice of the attorney, I'm going to let you speak, Mr. Moe.
Okay, thank you. Just that the cards are a little bit mixed up with the agenda items today. All right.
Not really.
I just want to say this about the item Mike Moe's name. The question was Glendale residents versus Los Angeles resident using this facility. If these people are homeless, I don't think they have a residence. So how can you distinguish between Glendale and Los Angeles? I understand we want to be Glendale residents. It's our taxes. I understand that completely. But if someone's homeless, he doesn't have a residence. Thank you.
Okay, I'm prepared to...
Mr. Quintero, now we've got several items. So for council, we've got...
I will move the council resolution at 1A.
Just 1A or 1A and D?
Okay, I'll move the resolutions at 1A, the agency at 1B, and the council at 1D.
Are you moving 1A
The chair of the
and
Housing
D?
Authority.
Right, I skipped C.
Stifsky, okay.
1B and D.
Well, probably should
On
again,
A, B, and D?
we need to separate them out for purposes.
You want 1A and D?
1A and 1D.
A and D can be done together.
Is there a second, Mr.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Kasakian.
This is for the council motions at 1A and 1D. Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes.
I'll move the agency resolution at 1B.
Second.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Chair Friedman.
Yes.
Someone move the authority
I'll
resolution.
move 1C for the authority.
Second.
Roll call.
Authority members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Mincy, Najarian,
Yes.
Brazian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Chair Quintero.
Yes. Move to adjourn for the housing authority.
Second. So moved. Second.
Move to adjourn for the council.
Council's adjourned.
I move to adjourn for the agency.
Second.
Is there a motion to adjourn for the agency?
So moved.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Did you get those straight?
Yes, I did.
That's it. Okay, now we're all right.